Coucou and peace, hello my loves, Marhaba, habibetey. So I wanted to do, I can speak today, I wanted to do an updated Q&A, and so I posted a picture on Instagram, which if you're not following over there, I will put that handle down below. I'm pretty sure it's just not your typical doll face. Hold on, I can check that because I have it open. Yeah, it's just not your typical doll face. And so I asked you guys if you had questions so I could do an updated Q&A. A lot has happened this year and you left me some great questions. So I was just gonna pop on here and answer those in today's video. Okay, if you have any other questions, leave them down below. I will either answer them in the comments, or I will film another video if it merits kind of like a part 2, but also leave any of your questions, your answers to these questions as well. I think it's a very weird year, and a lot of these questions I think we could benefit from sharing our answers with each other about. So without further ado, I am just going to jump in. So Safi, I think that's the way you pronounce it, Keats, asked, so her first question she'd asked me on YouTube, and it was my favorite running gear kind of training questions. So I will potentially film a video on that, but if there's enough interest to like see all the different stuff. But I will say that my absolute favorite gear for running is a really good pair of shoes. And I think whether you're a runner or a walker, like especially with everything that's happening now and being out and walking, comprising such a large component of a safe activity to do right now, a really good pair of shoes will take you a long way. And the problem with shoes, so I wear New Balance 860s, and they're probably the third long distance running shoe that have been my ride or dies. I would continue to wear them, but they keep making new models of them, and so they change them just enough they start hurting my feet. The problem with shoes is that I would suggest to go get fitted, and that is often hard in what's happening with store closures and not feeling comfortable going into a store. I would say though, if you are able to, that's probably the best way, because it'll make a world of difference for how long you'll want to be outside, how comfortable you will be out there, the lack of injury, because injury is just, it's what we all want to avoid in general, but definitely right now. So a solid pair of shoes is definitely my best recommendation. The rest of my gear can kind of give or take. I don't have necessarily ride or dies and like pants and tops and sports bras and even like hijabs. I will wear my cotton ones sometimes. I have a set of Nike ones that are more breathable that I like just fine. I've got buff hats that I like to wear more than visors, especially when it's sunny. I've got like collapsible ones, those ones are great. But nothing that is like a ride or die brand or type. The shoes are probably the ones. And then I like hydration backpacks. So like it's basically like a backpack I wear, and it's got a pouch, they call it a bladder, but I'm gonna call it a pouch, inside that you fill up with water, and then like a little tube, and I can like drink out of it. I prefer that to belts that have water packs on them. Mine's I think from a brand called Nathan. I bought it a long time ago from like a camping store, but I really like those. Someone else, I don't think it was Safi, but I think someone else asked me what I was doing when I talked about training for Dopey. So the Run Disney Dopey Challenge is a running challenge put on by Disney, and they do it at the Disney World, like in Orlando. Races, when they used to have the races in California, and they still have them now in France, they don't do the Dopey and the Goofy challenges. But they're a set of challenges that you do over the weekend, the race weekend that they host in January. And so Goofy is when you run a half marathon and a full marathon in consecutive days, the Saturday and the Sunday. Dopey is when you run a 5K, a 10K, a half, and a full on 4 consecutive days. And not even a year ago, Noelle reminded me in voice messages that I told her if I ever said I wanted to run Dopey, that she should come over here and smack me because I had lost my mind. And she reminded me of that. I'm like, well, good thing the border is closed because you can't smack me now. So I very quickly went from I will never run a marathon a year and a half ago to now having run two to I'm gonna run Dopey next year. So yeah, that is my current goal, my big, hairy, audacious goal. And I decided, so I got shut out. Okay, we're gonna back up. I decided to run Dopey virtually for 2 reasons. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm planning that the second weekend in January, I will be running that race from home. Whereas most of my friends who are running it or running the marathon, running the half, are flying down, fingers crossed, to Orlando to do that. I decided to run it from here for 2 reasons. One is because I wasn't sure where the international border closures would be at that point. As we sit here in early August, they're still closed with no necessarily signs of reopening soon. So I just don't know if I physically would be able to travel after having trained for so long. I just don't know if I'll be able to get down there to do that race. And even if they have reopened, I don't know where my comfort level with travel will be. So I wanted to take out the uncertainty and the stress around will it, won't it happen by making it a virtual. So that's the first reason. And then the second reason is I'll link my video down below where I did the Banff virtual marathon, where I talk about something called the balloon ladies, which are visual pacers. So you have to maintain a 16-minute pace. I can do a whole other video on that for hours and hours. But basically, the stress of those women who at times were too fast, who at times I fell behind because of the heat, because of this, because of that, took a lot of the joy out of the last part of my marathon, and added a lot of stress to it. So I do want to tackle Dopey in person one day, but I appreciated how much having a big challenge in front of me motivated me and kept me in a positive headspace last month with my Banff virtual marathon. So I wanted to keep only positive challenges in front of me as we go forward. So that's what's taking me into running Dopey. And yeah, it's a different set of training and what have you, which I will probably also film. I'll do like an August Dopey check-in, and I'll tell you more about what that's looked like. But honestly, I've done a lot more walking. Like, I've been spending a lot more time on my feet, taking things slowly, even when I am running, and I've really, really been enjoying it. So I would say just like one of you asked me, I think it was on YouTube, like what it's about, and she's not a runner, but you know, she's been out walking. And I think just like picking whether it's you're gonna do 100 miles or you're gonna go out for a 2-hour walk and that's not a target you've reached. Like, set something that scares you a little bit but excites you, and give yourself that positive challenge to latch onto. I think especially at a time like this, it's like, I don't know, when I finished my marathon, the biggest thought that carried me through the next couple of weeks was, I did this really intense, awesome thing in this time, and how much of a badass am I, right? And like, that is such an empowering thought and sentiment to carry with you at a time like this. So, okay, that was a very long tangent. Our other question was, when did I start doing points of positivity? Wondering when or why this started, and if you stick to it each day. I try to, and you're the person I think of. I prefer it as peaks and pits of my day, as I'm trying to steer away from negative thinking. It's consumed too many years of my life, so I'm grateful to you for reminding me of your POP. I love the abbreviation. I love the abbreviation too. POP, points positivity. Thank you for sharing. And yes, staying away from negative thoughts is definitely the thing that is super important at any point, and now most definitely. So I started doing points of positivity back in college. I took a 1-credit like elective class called Happiness, and they taught us a whole bunch of different theories and research and like strategies to stay happy and positive. And this was the one that stuck, because they said if you can start your day when you open your eyes, instead of jumping on your phone, scrolling through social media or your emails, by thinking of 3 things you're grateful for, or 3 things that make you happy, it will start your day off to such a more positive way. It's not a perfect solution, but it's trying to recondition your brain to look for the positives, even in chaos and in particularly negative times. So I have done it ever since then. I will do it alone in my head. For a while I did it alone just in my head. For a while a friend of mine and I had an email chain going. Now it's a practice over the last year or so that I actually write down, like I have a notebook, and I end my day with my points of positivity. What were the 3 things today that made me grateful? And so I just find that it's not a perfect process, but even in an incredibly overwhelming, chaotic, and negative day, if I can spend 30 seconds and think of 3 things I'm grateful for, because honestly, as hard as things are, there are 3 things I will be grateful for every day, right? Whether that's as simple as like my sense of sight, being able to put my head on a pillow and feel safe at the end of the night. Like, there are things that, it doesn't mean that you don't give yourself the grace to have a hard day. It doesn't mean that it invalidates anything that's causing us pain, anguish, or negativity. But taking that moment to do it as a practice is such a powerful one. And in that class, the other thing that I learned was that it takes 3 to 5 positive interactions to erase 1 negative interaction, and I do find that to be true. So it doesn't mean that by doing this, and that's why you do 3, and so it doesn't mean that by doing this every day is, you know, sunshine and rainbows, but it does definitely help, and it starts to condition your brain to, even in the darkest of nights, look for that ray of light, you know? Okay, Ninciana0 asked, what are the last 3 books you've read, and will you tell us about them, please? Yeah, okay. No, I'm smiling because I can tell you about some of them, but okay, here's why I'm laughing. I've been on a romantic novel kick. I've never in my life read romantic novels until I went to Vancouver a couple weeks ago. And I don't know how I stumbled on one from a library recommendation, and it's been like this, you know, when you like find something and you just spiral. So we're like 10 books in now, and it's not fully like, I don't know. It's just, it seems out of character for me and it seems silly, but it's been making me happy. So I've been reading a bunch of the books by Megan Marsh, if any of you have read those, and they're silly. They're all the same. Whether it's like the cowboy or the billionaire or the southern gentleman or whatever it is, right? They're just like the super silly stereotype. But yeah, if you need something like super light and that is your jam, and like you don't mind there's like a few explicit little, you know, situations, so it's not for everybody. But that's what those have been the actual last 3 books I've been reading. But if we pull back to before we fell down that rabbit hole, the three books I read before that were When Life Gives You Lululemons. I have screenshots of my book covers so I can remember. When Life Gives You Lululemons, and this is a book by Lauren Weisberger, who wrote The Devil Wears Prada. So it takes Emily from that book and 2 of her friends and kind of weaves their tales in a very Sophie Kinsella kind of way. So as you can tell, that was the first book I read when I was on vacation, and I was like just veering towards a more positive, lighthearted read, which was much needed. And then before that, I read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. So this is the story of Nike and how they were started. It's an incredibly interesting book. I found it really neat. So I think if you are a runner, you would enjoy it. If you like reading, it's kind of a mix between a business book and a biography. So if either of those 2 genres is your jam, it's also really good. I listened to the audiobook. The narrator was not my favorite, but I will say that it was a really interesting story, and I do recommend it. And then the book before that was super heavy. It's called Educated by Tara Westover. And this one I read the reason I have a picture of an actual book and not the cover. I read an ebook, and it was just quicker to come in than the physical book. Our libraries were closed. It was heavy. So it's the story of, I'm trying to find the best way to describe it. She was raised, I don't want to say it was a cult. Her family were very, very conservative. What is the word? Like, not the end of the world type thought process, but of like, we want to be off the grid. We don't want to rely on the government. The end is coming. We need to be self-sufficient. Not cult-like, but adjacent to that, like a very stigmatized, dangerous at times upbringing. And she gets away through education to go study and find, you know, a life that's different. And what I liked about it is that it didn't paint necessarily this picture of, it didn't try to paint all people kind of within one community with the same brush. it was really about her telling her story and her experience, and also painting her family as people who are human, who made mistakes. Not like trying to defend anybody's actions, but just trying to show a story that was fair to her experience, which I think a lot of times it's not that way in books that try to give you a lens on something that is obviously a problem, but want to paint everyone. And it's usually tied to like religion, right? So I'm thinking of like Infidel, which I have many thoughts on, where, you know, someone's incredibly unforgivable, horrible experience then becomes kind of a touch point to paint an entire religion with one brush. So I did really enjoy the book. Seems weird because it's a very heavy book, but it was a very well written story and a very interesting book. So yeah, that's the spectrum of Sarah's reading, just fully all over the place. And then she also asked me, have you found that the coronavirus has changed your relationship with perfume and makeup? For instance, do you find yourself not wearing certain things because of social distancing, or reaching for specific things because of comfort? So it definitely has. I find that I don't wear perfume as often these days. I don't know why. I know that like in the the one instance over the last 5 months when I had to go into I had to go get an ultrasound. So I knew that on that day they were very specific about no fragrance. So that's a specific instance where like I was not allowed to wear perfume. But I will say I've just been very, I don't know why, cognizant of like perfume being something that may or may not be disruptive to somebody else. And that, I don't know, like with social distancing, we're further away from each other. So like, you're not going to smell me as often, but that may just totally be in my own head. I did realize how much I miss it. Like there's a very warm, comforting value of perfume that will take me back to a time and place. For example, Illamasqua's Freak takes me back to when I took that makeup class in London, and who knows when I'll get to go back to London. So I did pick it up yesterday and put it on, and it reminded me of like the set story time videos I used to do, and how scent can take you back to these really visceral memories, and how much I want to go back to wearing perfume. So this question kind of reminded me as I was prepping for the video that I need to go back to that. If you guys want to see an updated perfume collection, let me know, because I think it would be fun to like sit here and like spritz it and like remind you of all the scents, the tones, but the stories that are behind my scents or my perfumes. As for makeup, I will say that I haven't been wearing makeup, and it's not been because of the masking. It's literally been because I've been so tired that even if I have the extra 15 minutes in the morning, I would rather sleep than put it on. But I'm starting to realize that I need to stop doing that, because there's a part of this, of me waking up in the morning and spending that time in self-care that is so important to my emotional mental health, that I want to go back to that. So the question, the videos have all been a reminder to take that time. So my commitment in August, and I'll report back to you at the end of the month, is to take that time to put my makeup on, and I'll report on what the things that I end up loving are as a result of that. Probably my favorites at the end of the month. So thank you for the question. And then the last question is the 3 things that have brought me comfort in these troubled times. I'm always searching for things to make me feel calm and safe, and that's from Cloudhopper46. So the first thing without a doubt has been my walking and running. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I scaled back, or kind of maybe alluded to in the beginning of the video, I scaled back on the intensity of the speed work I've been doing, settling more so for distance. And at the beginning of COVID, it was because I wanted to run this virtual marathon, and so I needed to go slow and long as opposed to fast and short. But what I realized was that by intentionally, and a lot of them were brisk walks and most of them were jogs, but by carving out at least an hour of my day, if not like 4 or 5 hours on the weekend when I was getting to the higher distances, this was my self-care time. It was the time where I put in an audiobook or music or a podcast or nothing, and I was just outside in nature by myself, away from all the rest of the noise of the news and of you know, the worry and all of it, it was that time outside spent in motion doing good things for my heart, physically and emotionally, and a constant in my day when everything else was chaos. So that definitely has been my first thing. And I would recommend, if it's not walking or running, just finding an activity that's about taking care of yourself, as a source of like it gives you that sense of achievement, of endorphins, of self-care that are so necessary. So that's definitely the first thing. The second has been audiobooks. And I would challenge you to like go for stuff that is fun, right? So for me, all of the books that I read were fun, but particularly now as it starts to feel very heavy in the world, these silly, stupid romance novels are just exactly that, silly and stupid and vapid and light. And they let me escape for a little while. And so those are definitely the second thing that I have been loving. And I would not, I mean, don't go out and read, you don't have to go read romance novels, but like find, you know, whatever silly, light, happy, or not necessarily. Like if you like utopian literature or historical biographies or whatever it is, like something that allows you that escape. I like the audiobooks because it lets me either like do other things while I'm listening, or just like sit and like be outside on my patio or in my home and just like let somebody else read a story to me. So that's definitely been the third thing. And the third thing that has been bringing me comfort at this time is a lot of really thoughtful Zoom and Skype calls with people that I love and people that I haven't. We've all been so busy because our lives are so busy, and now that you've been sheltering at home and staying homebound and not out as much, it's given us the opportunity to spend that time with them, and you know, obviously virtually. And so it does two things for me. One, it lets me check in with them and miss them a little bit less because we get that FaceTime. But two, it also lets me connect with people that I haven't, well, we don't get to talk as often when we weren't in this pandemic situation because we were so busy. So there is, you know, a silver lining or a positive to this crazy troubled time. So yeah, I will say that 3B, like that was 3A. 3B has also been sometimes it gets claustrophobic being in my own space all the time. And so I found that I tend to go on these long drives. I'm in a place in Western Canada where a lot of stuff is basically almost everything has reopened, but I still haven't really changed my behavior. I'll go to the supermarket, I go to work, and that's about as far as I want to go. But sometimes I need to get out of the house for more than a walk or run. And so I've just been going for these long, beautiful drives, and that's been also really peaceful and comforting. So anyways, I was expecting that there were 4 questions to be a quick video. It was not. I should have expected no less out of my rambly self, but I will leave you. I mean, I guess those have been my 3 points of positivity. I got to do all of those things today, and those are really my points of positivity. So tell me, what are yours? Answer any of these questions. I love you guys so very much. I will see you in the next one, but I can never leave you without reminding you that life is just way too short to wear boring lipstick. Bye, guys.